Hello, everyone. Well, it's been a little bit of time since I've been doing any of these videos. It's hard to find time to do any of these videos, but I just wanted to show you something that I came across on one of the forums, on BlenderArtists.org. One of the guys on there, one of the people on there, was working with the International Space Station, and I had already done that. And I was going to share the files so that it would speed up the process, but looking for the files, guess what? I couldn't find them. I saved them in two different places. I thought I had backed them up on an external drive. They're nowhere. So I decided to go, well, let's show you a little bit about how I technically go about doing this really quick. So, um, the International Space Station is, I think it's set out in several different formats, but I think it's in LWO, so it's a lightweight format. And if anyone's tried to import a lightweight format file into Blender, you'll notice that the translator doesn't work too well anymore. And that's because new tech went through two different iterations of the LWO format. So you have to convert it first to something else. And usually what I do is I convert it to OBJ. Now, when I converted this to OBJ, I didn't convert the materials with it. I didn't download the materials with it. It will usually translate over, and the materials will come in, and it looks fairly decent. You just have to kind of reassign them. The thing about if you don't have a conversion process for that or something, Windows has Accutrans. I don't know if it's for Linux or not. I didn't look that up before this, but what I used was an online 3D converter. And so you can go here to greentoken.de/online conversion or convert right up there at the top there if you can see it. Um, it's a place where you can upload 5 files. LWO is one of those import file formats that you can do the input right there. You can upload a maximum of 5 files at a time, up to 50 megabytes. Um, so, 5, 10 megabyte files or whatever like that, right? But it can only do 5 files at a time. So the total size is 50 megabyte limit. And so basically you hit add file, you add your files to it. You start uploading, and it uploads it there to their server. You hit next, you tell it what you want it converted over to, you hit next again, and then pretty soon it starts spitting out a bunch of things. So for the OBJ, it'll spit out the OBJ and the MTL that has your materials in it. So if you do have something, the translator that actually works on the imports for the LWO, you'll see it either do one of two things, and I think there's some options down there that can split it out for you or not. But in one, because uh, materials are signed per surface in Lightwave, that means you select what surface you want the materials to go to, not exactly the object. It doesn't have any ideas about objects. It will come in here and import everything in as, or all the different materials as different objects, which can be kind of cool, can speed up workflow, as long as you're dealing with things of the same type of surface, So if your surface was yellow in color or something, and you had a bunch of yellow parts and you didn't want to break them out, that's fine. But if you wanted to change the colors, then that gets a little bit hairy. In this case, for bringing in the OBJ, what we have here is we have all the objects. We have the gas tanks on the top here. Let's show you what that is. And then there's another one down on the bottom, down here. That's gas tank 4. And then we have the main structure. And all those surfaces that it uses, of course, are going to be in here. Of course, if you go over to the surface materials, there they are right there. None of the surfaces have anything to them. Like I said, I didn't bring in the MTL file, the material file with the OBJ. It gives me a little bit more latitude, because I'm going to end up changing it anyway. I'm going to go through it for nodal workflow, either through Cycles or LuxCore Render. And on some of these other models I've done with RenderMan, but RenderMan 22 isn't out there for Blender yet for the non-commercial. So basically this is a very low res object. It doesn't have a lot of detail to it. It's not supposed to be seen really, really close. I think it's supposed to be seen from a distance anyway, and so you have all these separate modules. They are modeled in place to where they go for the most part. There are some things that you would have to tweak, but um, basically I had a render. Oh, where was it? Da, da, da. I'm not really sure if I had it under. Oh yeah, wait. I think I remember where it was. I think it's in here. And in here. And there it is. Okay, so this is what the render looks like. And come on. At a distance, it looks great. So this is a cycles render, I believe. I used a high intensity sun, and of course used the hard shadows. Wanted to get the shadows as hard as possible because there is no atmosphere to scatter anything up there. So we do have some pretty hard shadows where the shadows fall. But most of these structures are in place and stuff, and I realized after a while that even though these provided this color for these types of structures, they're technically just like the Japanese module over here. So I could go back and do that metallic anyway, but they provided some colored images to apply on that. But if you look at reference materials of actual photographs of the ISS, it's not actually like that. So anyway, and all the greater detail is put in there by bump mapping and stuff like that, bump normal mapping. And it does a pretty damn good job. So at a distance, it looks pretty neat, right? Okay, so anyway, how did we get to that point? Well, you don't want to mess around too much, especially on something like this, but when we go into the main structure, you'll notice that it's triangulated. Now, Lightwave can output OBJs that are not triangulated. There are settings for that. Maybe this is for compatibility issues. I'm not really sure. But the first thing that I usually look at here is going into cleaning up those triangles. So I use the tries the quads command right there. And then we get rid of most of that stuff. Now what I did this last time kind of jacked everything up because I went ahead and did a limited dissolve with everything selected. What I would do is I would select the things that you want a limited dissolve to be done on. Because last time I cleared out a bunch of extra geometry here. And so, for example, since these are all going to be kind of separate but linked, yeah, it's not going to let me do it the way I'd like it to. But anyway, you can redo things and connect those at will. But I'll still just show you really quick with a limited dissolve. See, it got rid of some things, didn't get rid of other things. I think it has to do with the sharpening. I don't know. Let's test here. You also notice that everything else is sharpened. This is not something that somebody put in there. This is something that is part of the smoothing algorithm that comes out of Lightwave, and I was always wondering what was happening whenever I exported an OBJ to work with in Substance Painter or Substance Designer. I was getting a lot of places that looked a little bit sharp. And some areas that weren't on things that were supposed to be completely smooth. And basically, Lightwave translates its smoothing algorithm, the same type of auto smooth that you would use here, but it translates over into marking areas as sharp internally somehow. I'm not sure. So that's why these things are marked as sharp. I'm going to do this as a little experiment though anyway. So we're going to go into edge data and we're going to clear that. What? Did I clear the sharp? There we go. So we clear the sharp. Let me see if that makes a difference on limited dissolve. Nope, sure doesn't. So anyway, what I would do is I'd take certain areas like this and maybe get in here. You know, whatnot. Let's just do this whole fan. And then get rid of that stuff. You know, just go at it one at a time if you really need to. Okay, just watch what you're doing. Staying usually close to these parts here usually helps a little bit on the selection because it's a fan type of selection here. So you can go through and do that and clean those things up, you know, because n-gons are completely fine to have on these flat surfaces. It doesn't matter. You're not subdividing anything, and even if you were, it was flat. And then you'll see all these little shading artifacts here. The shading artifacts are due to something that comes in with many OBJs from different packages. And I'm going to show you on a simpler part what exactly is going on here. Let's look at this one. I'll recenter that. Okay, so basically what's going on here is that the normals are being all perturbed by this custom split normals data here. And so when we take a look at the mesh display, you're not going to see anything wrong with the vertex normals because they're all right, and you're not going to see anything wrong with the actual normals of the geometry. Those are going to be correct. What you're going to see are the faces, but what you are going to see is the normals are all kind of conjecting, pointing in all different directions, and there aren't enough of them coming out of here for the vertex per face normals. And so when you clear those, watch what happens. Bang. Everything gets all straightened out. You get rid of all your stuff, all your artifacts. Those things don't exist anymore. And so that's what I do on each little case here. And we'll select everything, Control N to recalculate normals on the outside. And you'll see we have some doubled geometry. I'm not sure how that got in there. Lightwave, after using Lightwave for several years, it does a really good job on actually maintaining good geometry, as long as you are maintaining good geometry practices. I'm not really sure how these overlapping parts would come about, but it would take a little bit of extra work to clean that up, and make sure that these things are one polygon. Just kind of like that, You could just get rid of that stuff. Let's get rid of that. Let's go here. Let's make that a face. See? So you just go around and you fix all those parts. The thing is that you could have kept it as tries. It wouldn't bother you at all on this type of model. The only time that it's going to really bother you is when you try to select a loop. You can't select an edge loop around some triangles because it ends up terminating at certain weird points, but you can select them around things that are quads, right? And so that makes your UV mapping a little bit easier. The other thing that I wanted to show you about the artifacting is that this would never be smooth. It has smoothing applied to it. It would never be smooth because look at all the sharps that are in there. So always clear your sharps. If you're working from stuff from Lightwave, clear your custom split data there. Go ahead and go into your tries the odds thing. Get rid of, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to work on there completely like that. Just fine. Then I'd probably go into face mode, come in here, take a look at this, extrude this back because some of these end up being flattened for some stupid reason. Flip your normals, and you can do the same for all of those if you want to. And then you just start applying your materials. And that's the initial steps that I would go through to really get you on the right path to getting things done. Yes, you are going to do some low level editing, and you are going to spend some time trying to get things lined up just right in some places, but for the most part what I did for many of these objects that came from NASA that were modeled in many different packages was just basically mesh cleanup like I did here, just so I could UV stuff, and then all it was just putting on texture maps and materials. And so it goes by so quickly. The other thing the person that wanted to do was to put things there was like floating geometry in certain places. That does happen with missing geometry, missing data. I had one which was the Hubble Space Telescope, was made from CAD data, translated into a 3ds Max file, but had a whole bunch of missing geometry. I'm not sure if the Max file had the missing geometry, but when it exported out, it sure did. So I had a lot of floating geometry and incomplete geometry. And luckily, most of it was on the inside, so it didn't really matter. I wasn't going to see it. The stuff that was on the outside, I just had to guess. So you'll get things like that. So let's show you one that's kind of like that. This one, it's open. This is where the astronauts usually look out and take all those pictures and stuff like that. I used to the couple of, and what you'll see right here is that you have one of these hatches that actually cover the windows here. Um, these thick windows that they look at, you can see that there's geometry on the inside. There's this opening here, but that opening doesn't extend back to where it's opened. So it may have been like an oversight, but if you want to do anything, let's see here on this hatch, if you want to actuate this and they wanted to reset the the pivot points for most of them, you're going to have to break this out. So you're going to have to come in here, grab all the parts that you want, right? And I'm not going to separate it out, but you're going to have to separate by selection to have it by itself. And then what I would do is I would go around here, see how those triangles mess up my edge looping. What I would do here is I'd come in, do the shift S, cursor to selected, and then you go back into object mode, shift control alt C if you have enough fingers on your hand to do that, and do the origin of 3D cursor, and then reset that there, and then so your pivots will always be around that area right there. That would take some time because then you have to break out, let's see here, you have to break out 7 things to end up animating it if you wanted to. Or you could take one of these and then array this around and then, you know, make sure that all these are following the same thing, because it'd be kind of nice to, or neat effect. It may even happen this way that all of these open up at the same time. I don't know. Never seen them actuate before, but that's how you would do that. So it's a little bit more intense work that you're going to be doing, but it can be done, and it's not going to take that long, really. What took me the longest was just jacking around with material types and stuff like that, but it was the same process repeated over and over again. And since these things are modeled and placed in space where they are going to relate to other objects on this model, then you don't have to move them around too much. Just make sure you're not moving your objects around, and they should all import in the fairly correct spot. And then you know, the things that need tweaking are a little bit easier to tweak. You just have to look as when you're doing it. There is a geez, what is it? Let me see here. I think there's some images, but I think there's now that's their version of it. I didn't like that too well. There was something I think I might have downloaded from the internet. I'm not really sure. It shows you how all the parts go together here, and then you can get some photographs. So kind of follow this stuff. Try to find this stuff if you can. Try to find photographs if you can. It tells you how those things go together and in what relationship they are. Because, you know, they're not everything is descriptive. You know, some of the stuff that they label in there is really short and sweet. So you're kind of guessing. This kind of helps you out with all that stuff. So really take a look at this and how things go together, and then reorient as you need to. That's all I did. So yeah, this is really helpful to try to look around in and see where all that stuff goes. You know. But anyway, hopefully this helped you out. Try to get, if you're interested in doing any of these NASA models and so on and so forth, basically they follow the same principles. You're going to get a lot of triangulated stuff. You're going to get a lot of crap geometry. In some places that doesn't really matter too much because all you're doing is just applying surfaces in general. If you're applying surfaces in general and not really UV mapping things, then you don't have to worry about it too much. But I still like the idea of having a good, fairly clean geometric representation of what's going on. And this is a hard surface model, so there's very little organic elements to it. So I would just use it as is, right? And then add some things where it needs to be added, and don't worry about the rest. So, like I said, if your whole idea is to get close to this thing and watch this thing move, I would probably cut out the opening there. What that opening looks like, I'm not even sure. I can't even tell you if this would be the appropriate thing and what it looks like. It's just really modeled as what you would see something probably this far away. And that's enough to track the eye. So it doesn't need to be that great a detail. But anyway, like I said, hopefully this helps everybody. Maybe I'll make some more videos in the future, and we'll talk about, oh, I don't know, maybe some sort of rendering, modeling, or whatever. Who knows? Until then, have a good one.